There is a second-floor apartment in Nishi Ward, Nagoya, where the television was still playing a variety show when the landlord pushed open the unlocked door. On the table, a bowl of miso soup sat cooling beside a cup of soggy instant noodles, a toddler's lunch, half-eaten. A 2-year-old boy sat on the floor nearby, unharmed. His mother was lying face down in the living room. It was November 13th, 1999. Her name was Namiko Takaba. She was 32 years old. That morning, she had taken her son to a pediatric clinic, come home just before noon, and started making lunch. By 2:30, she was dead, stabbed multiple times in the neck with a sharp object. And here is where this story becomes something else entirely. Because her husband, Satoru, did not clean the apartment. He did not scrub the blood off the floor. He did not throw away the half-drunk bottle of lactic acid beverage that sat on the kitchen counter, a brand his family never bought, sold only at stores 30 kilometers away. He did not remove Namiko's jacket from where she had hung it. He did not touch her photo books, or her fan club newsletters, or the handwritten recipe collection she had built across their marriage. He moved out. He took his son. And then, every single month, for the next 26 years, he kept paying the rent. 50,000 yen a month after month, year after year, while his son grew from a toddler into a man. While the seasons turned and turned and turned outside that second-floor window, where nothing inside ever changed. 22 million yen in total. Roughly 145,000 American dollars spent on an apartment no one lived in. An apartment frozen in the exact configuration of the worst day of his life. And he did it for one reason. He believed the blood on the floor would eventually speak. Let me take you back to what was known. When police arrived that afternoon in 1999, they found blood everywhere. The living room, the washroom, trails of it leading out the front door and onto the street. Shoe prints, small, a woman's size. A witness had seen a woman walking calmly away from the building, apparently hiding an injured hand. The investigation was enormous. 100,000 officers deployed across the region. 5,000 people questioned individually. They established the attacker was female, likely between 40 and 50 years old, with type B blood and a shoe size of 24 centimeters. They issued a reward. They circulated sketches based on witness descriptions. They published those sketches again in 2015 and again in 2020. None of it worked. The case went cold. But Satoru did not go cold with it. In the first years after the murder, he assumed all the blood in the apartment was Namiko's. It was his wife's home. She had been the one attacked. It seemed obvious. Then, 3 years after her death, a forensic expert visited the apartment as part of a television program and raised a possibility that changed everything. Some of the blood, particularly the stains near the entrance, might not belong to Namiko at all. It might belong to the person who killed her. Satoru pressed the police. They confirmed it quietly, but told him they could not officially disclose whose blood it was. That detail was something only the killer would know. It was an investigative secret. And in that moment, Satoru understood something. The apartment was not just a memorial. It was a witness. The blood on the floor near the doorway was a signature left behind by a woman who had been injured during the attack, who had walked out through her own blood without realizing what she was leaving behind. If he let the apartment go, if the landlord cleaned it, renovated it, rented it to someone new, that signature would vanish, and with it, perhaps the only physical link to the person who had taken Namiko from him. So he kept paying. There is something I want you to sit with for a moment. Satoru once told a Japanese reporter that pursuing justice felt like chasing a ghost. He said it not with bitterness, but with a kind of steadiness that is hard to describe. He never remarried. He raised his son alone. He handed out leaflets on the streets of Nagoya, year after year, asking anyone with information to come forward. He gave interviews to every outlet that would listen, not because he wanted attention, but because he understood that the moment the public forgot, the case would truly die. And he did something else, something that went far beyond his own tragedy. Together with other families of murder victims, he helped form a group called Soranokai. The name translates roughly to heavenly meeting. Their mission was simple and radical. They wanted Japan to abolish the statute of limitations for murder. In 1999, when Namiko was killed, Japanese law gave investigators just 15 years to solve a murder. After that, the case was closed. The killer walked free. For Satoru, the mathematics were brutal. His wife had been murdered in '99. The clock would run out in 2014. Unless something changed, the blood on the floor would become legally meaningless, no matter what future science could extract from it. Soranokai lobbied. They held press conferences. They told their stories. They made the argument that DNA does not expire, and neither should justice. And in 2010, 4 years before Satoru's deadline, Japan abolished the statute of limitations for murder entirely. The law was retroactive, covering any killing committed after April 1995. The clock stopped. The blood could wait as long as it needed to. If this story is giving you something, consider subscribing. Not every case gets 26 years of patient patience behind it, but the ones that do deserve to be heard. Now, here is where it turns. In 2024, a new inspector was assigned to the Takaba case. The Aichi Prefectural Police had never fully abandoned it, but fresh eyes brought fresh strategy. Investigators began building a list, not of suspects in the traditional sense, but of people connected to the family who had, over the years, refused to provide DNA samples. The list narrowed to roughly 500 names. Among them was a 69-year-old woman named Kumiko Yasufuku. Police had spoken to her before, more than once. Each time, she had declined to give a DNA sample. But in 2025, investigators approached her again. They questioned her several times through the year. They asked again for a sample. She refused, and refused, and refused. Then, on October 30th, 2025, she walked into a police station and provided her blood. The DNA matched instantly. The blood at the entrance of that apartment, the blood Satoru had been paying to preserve for over 2 decades, belonged to Kumiko Yasufuku. She confessed. And here is the detail that makes this story almost impossible to hold. Yasufuku was Satoru's high school classmate. They had been in the same soft tennis club at Ishin High School in Aichi Prefecture. When they were teenagers, she had sent him Valentine's Day chocolates and a handwritten letter confessing her feelings. He had turned her down gently because he liked another girl in the same class. They stayed friends, loosely. She would occasionally come to watch his university tennis matches. Eventually, he asked her to stop. They reconnected briefly at a class reunion, roughly a year before the murder. She told him she had gotten married but was exhausted from work. That was the last time they spoke before Namiko died. Yasufuku had never met Namiko. She had no contact information for the family. She had no direct relationship with the woman she killed. And yet, on November 13th, 1999, she entered that apartment in Nishi Ward while Satoru was at work and his wife was making their toddler's lunch. For 26 years afterward, Yasufuku lived just 2 kilometers from the home Satoru had moved into with his son, 10 kilometers from the crime scene she had created. She told investigators she had been anxious every day, especially as the anniversary of the killing approached. Every November, for 26 Novembers, she waited to be found. And 2 kilometers away, Satoru kept paying the rent. When I first encountered this story, the detail that stopped me was not the DNA. It was not the 22 million yen. It was the kitchen table. That half-drunk bottle of lactic acid beverage, a brand the family never purchased, sold at stores 30 kilometers from the apartment. The killer had brought a drink with her. She had sat at Namiko's table. She had drunk from it calmly enough to leave it half-finished. And then she killed a woman she never met, because decades earlier, that woman's husband had politely declined a teenage love letter. There is something in this story that resists explanation. Yasufuku has admitted to the killing. She has expressed remorse, but she has not provided a motive that makes sense of the act. Police believe a class reunion roughly a year before the murder may have triggered something, but they are still investigating. On March 5, 2026, prosecutors announced Yasufuku would stand trial. A psychiatric evaluation has been ordered to assess her mental state at the time of the crime. Satoru's response to the arrest was not triumph. It was not relief. It was a question. "The case is not over," he said, "until the question of why Namiko is resolved." He also said something quieter, something that has stayed with me since I read it. When asked about his wife, he paused. "I wish I had told her your cooking is delicious more often." Namiko Takaba had told her husband, shortly before she died, that she was the happiest she had ever been. They had just signed the contract for a new condominium. They were planning to have a second child. Her handwritten recipe collection was still growing. The apartment in Nishi Ward still stands as it was. The miso soup is long gone, but the jacket is there. The photo books are there. The recipe collection is there. The blood stain near the entrance, the one that waited 26 years to be matched, is there. Satoru's son, Kohei, who was 2 years old when he sat on the floor beside his mother's body, is now 28. After the arrest, he said, "I think my father's persistence over the long 26 years ultimately led to the arrest. I hope my mother can rest in peace, even a little." Satoru had a meal with old friends after Yasufuku was taken into custody. They congratulated him. He cried, "I want to thank everyone who has supported me for 26 years, he said. And then he said something that I think captures the entire weight of this story better than anything else could. "I really never thought the culprit would be arrested." He never believed it would work. He just could not stop. The apartment is still rented. The blood is still on the floor. And somewhere in Nagoya, a trial is beginning that will try to answer a question that 26 years of patience, $145,000, and a single man's refusal to let go have finally made possible. Why Namiko? Nobody knows yet, and Satoru Takaba is still waiting.